All right, everybody, welcome to the Beyond the Leaderboard podcast. This is Trey Honeycutt. Thanks for jumping on. This will be episode 8. We are going to name this podcast A Time and a Season for Everything. So episode 8, A Time and a Season for Everything. So one of the things I've noticed a lot, and I'm going to go on a few tangents with this, but a thing that I've noticed a lot with agents is they tend to not be content with where they're at right now. And the thing I try to convince people of all the time, which, by the way, if you succeed in the business, it'll be because of you. If you fail in the business, it'll be because of you. It won't be because somebody else came along and gave you the right motivation or the right inspiration or the right pep talk. Or if you don't already have that, like if you're waiting for somebody to come along and motivate you, then what if they never show up? That's the best question that you could ask. Like, what if somebody never shows up? Like faith, I don't know how to teach faith to people. I don't know how to teach people tenacity or stick-to-itness or how to not be a punk, really, because like if I had a motto of FFL from the very beginning that I would say to myself is, I'm not a punk. What Sean Mike would say is, have some respect for yourself. I think way too many people are like wallowing around in problems that really aren't problems at all, with a poor perspective on where they're at, waiting for somebody to come along and fix their problems for them. The reality is you have everything you need to fix your problem. The problem that most people are facing is they're trying to grow from where they think they should be, not from where they're actually at. See, in this business, you can't grow from where you think you should be. You can only grow from where you actually are. And whatever season you're in the business, you've got to learn to accept that season and grow in that season. What most people do is they look at somebody else's harvest and they get envious about being in their season, thinking that their season is better than your season. But all you're doing is just seeing the fruit of that season. You don't see the struggle. You don't see the past. You don't see what's gone into it. You don't see the hours and hours and hours that they spent cultivating, the hours and hours and hours that they spent planting, the heartache, the closet crying moments. You don't see any of it. You don't see charge packs. You don't see the no-shows. You don't see the door knocks that got slammed in their face. You don't see the lead roll up. They're all the stuff you don't see. All you see is the harvest. And you think, gosh, if I could just be there. And the reality is the lesson that you need to learn is in the season where you're at right now, if that makes sense. See, the thing that I understand early on, I never lost track of this, is the way it works is there's seed, you got to plant, there's time, and then there's harvest. Where everybody gets messed up is the time. So you don't harvest in the same season that you plant. So what happens is people go out and they share the Family First Life opportunity with 10 people. And then they expect those 10 people to be $50,000 producers the next day, a month. And when they're not, they get discouraged and they stop planting. The lesson you need to take away is always be sowing. You reap what you sow. Like people hear that. They say, for whatever reason, the connotation that people have gotten from that biblical wisdom is that if you do bad stuff's going to happen to you. That's what people get from it. Oh, you reap what you sow. That person deserved that because they sowed this bad stuff. Well, the actual context of that passage isn't about bad stuff. It's about good stuff. If you go back and read it, it's not talking about anything bad happening. It's saying, hey, if you sow this way, then you will reap this way. And it's all good. The opposite of bad stuff happening is usually you aren't sowing at all. Right? You're sowing to the wind and reaping the whirlwind. Well, that means you aren't doing anything. You sow a little bit here, you sow a little bit there, and then poverty comes upon you and you can't figure out why. But if you're consistently sowing, you're consistently sharing FFL with people, you're consistently buying leads and running appointments. You're consistently running 30 appointments a week. You're consistently investing in the business. You're consistently getting on the training calls, and you do it every single week, whether you feel like doing it or not, whether it seems like it's not making any inroad to where you think you should be going. There is a time where it all seems like it's in vain and stupid. But in reality, that's the time where that seed underneath the ground is sprouting and growing roots and getting wider and getting stronger so that it can shoot up into this powerful tree, right? Like no tree can grow 100 feet tall unless it's got really strong roots. How do roots grow? It takes time. The poor fellow that's looking at the surface the whole time thinking, man, nothing's happening. No, everything's happening, but it's underneath the surface. But if you stop watering it, if you stop pulling the weeds around it, if you stop paying attention to it, what do? You get a dead plant. That's the way it works here. See, what happens is people stop sowing. They talk to 10 people, none of them do anything. One starts, he quits, they get a chargeback, you get discouraged, you don't do it again until next August. And you wonder why you're not VP. That's why. That's all it is. People say, well, I hired a gazillion people and none of them did nothing. Well, you're in that season where you hire a gazillion people and none of them do nothing. How many people are board members in the company who have been through that season? All of them. We've all gone through that. Say, Trey, give me some wisdom. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't stop planning. Show up, run your appointments, invest in the business. Do more for people than what you have to do. Do more for people than what they expect from you. That's pretty much it. And do it faithfully when you don't see the result. Where people miss it is during the time where you're not seeing the results. See, I don't know how to teach people how to have faith. I don't know how to do that. You either have that or you don't. Like it's fight or flight. I don't know how to teach people how to fight. I don't know how. Some people just run, and that's the way they are. I don't know how to fix it. I mean, time either exposes you or promotes you. We'll find out in time what you were made of. Whether you give up, go to the corner, suck your thumb, talk about how bad it is, blame somebody else, or you keep sowing. I hope this makes sense. I mean, that's it. There's a time and a season for everything. And I think what happens a lot is the biggest problem with people and their contentment in this business and their ability to survive and stay in a long period of time is they're always looking to the left and the right, and they're always comparing themselves to other people. You can't do that because you only see the fruit. You don't see the root. You don't see what it's made up of. You don't see what they're going through at that time. If there's one message I want people to understand, it's that. And you don't understand what it looks like when that crop blossoms 30, 60, 100-fold. It's like looking back over your business, if you've been here for years, there's things that happen that you don't plan. And they happen for your good, and it makes everything work. And then you start looking at things, you go, well, what if that would have never happened, and that would have never led to this, and that would have never led to this, and this organization would even be here. It's so strange. What if I can go through so many scenarios like that looking back, and you say, well, just tell me what to do, Trey, just tell me what to do. It's not just about what you do. It's not just about the how-tos. It's how you do the hows. Do you have faith? Do you have an expectancy that it's actually going to work out in the end? Or are you just over there twiddling your thumbs, trying to go through enough activity so you can check the box, so when it doesn't work, you can be like, hey, I told you that wouldn't work. I think a lot of people are doing it that way. And people overthink it. This is not that deep. This is a very, very simple business. It's very easy. You buy leads. You call them. You set appointments with the ones that want to see you. You go help them with life insurance. And then you teach other people how to call leads and go help them with life insurance. That's it. We basically do two things. We do three things. We call leads, we go sit with the leads and help them with life insurance, and then we hire other people to call leads and go sit with the leads and sell them life insurance. That's all there really is to it. There's nothing more to it than that. But the tendency is to overcomplicate it. The tendency is to play a bunch of mind games with yourself. And all along, when all that stuff's happening, you see Bob over here, and Bob's killing it in the business. And you start trying to minimize Bob and say, well, he's only killing it because of this. And, he got that. And I didn't get this. And he got that. And meanwhile, Bob is just over here watering his plant, making sure it's in the sunlight, taking care of it, pulling the weeds. He does it every single day. He doesn't complain. He doesn't go to anybody else and gossip. You go get all the neighbors and talk about Bob's doing something bad with that plant over there. Yeah, I don't even know if that's a legal plant for him to be growing. And then you have this big gossip fest about how that can't be real, what Bob's doing. Meanwhile, Bob's garden looks way better than your garden. You go back to your garden, you got a bunch of weeds, everything's dead. You wonder why. Because all you're focused on is Bob. There's a season in this business where nobody sees the work you do. Nobody sees it. Nobody's cheering you on. Nobody's giving you recognition. Nobody's saying, great job. It's just you, your thoughts, and your hands, and the work that you do when nobody's looking. And if you do that consistently and persistently long enough, then you start getting the accolades. By the time you get the accolades, all the hard work's already done. It's just like an airplane. 90% of an airplane's fuel is spent getting the plane off the ground. That's where most of the work is. By the time everybody's cheering the captain on and the plane's in the air, like all the hard work's done. We got off the ground and we got in the air. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. I hope you guys can relate to what it is that I'm saying, because I see so many people want to get, they want to get this great result, but they don't want to go through the work. They want the fruit, but they don't want the fight. And there's always a fight. This is not easy. It's simple. It's cliche-ish. It's simple, but it's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because you have to learn to manage your emotions in this business. Stop looking at everybody else. Stop saying, hey, this person's doing this person's doing that. They've been here a month. They're writing 10K a week. I've been here 5 months and I can't write 10K in a month. I suck. There's something wrong with me. Be honest with where you are. If you're honest with where you are, here's the thing you need to measure in the business. That Sean Mike has said this the entire time, because I always had this state of confusion where I would say, well, what do you measure? Do you measure like the amount of appointments? Do you measure like the amount of dials? Do you measure the amount of time? Is it about the AP that you write every week? I mean, what is it that you're trying to quantify and trying to track on a regular basis? And Sean's answer has always been the same. Just work 40 hours. Just work 40 hours. Look, if you run 20 appointments, how many hours does that actually take? It takes about 25 hours. Say, Trey, my appointments are 7 hours a piece. Oh, no, they're not, okay? You say, could you really do 20 appointments in 25 hours of actual work? Yeah. How do I know that? Because some of them aren't going to show up, right? So even if your in-home's an hour and a half, by golly, that's 25 hours worth of work. 20 appointments is 25 hours worth of work. How long does it take to set 20 appointments? Let's say you're really bad and it takes you 8 hours. That's 33 hours, okay? You say, I got to drive. Hey, look, if you had a job that you commuted to and it was an hour away, you're not counting that as part of your 40-hour work week. You're just commuting to your job. So drive time does not count, all right? So now I'm 8 hours on the phone. I set 20 appointments. I ran all 20. I'm 33 hours in. That's not even a 40-hour work week. What do you do for the other 7 hours? How long does it take to have 3 2-minute conversations a day and send people to the Rogue IMO? It takes about 6 minutes. So you do that 7 days a week. That's another 42 minutes. Let's just round up and say you're long-winded. That's another hour. What do you do with the other 6 hours? Like, are you really putting 40 hours of work into your week? And if you're not, you need to find ways to put 40 hours of work into the week. And the phase 1 type activity of dialing leads, setting appointments, going to see people, hiring new agents, that's pretty much it, right? Like that's the workload. Spending time with your staff, that type of stuff. If you're working 40 hours, it's impossible for you not to make a ton of money in the business. But let me tell you what most people do. They run 8 appointments. That takes 10 hours. It took them 2 hours to dial to set the 8 appointments or the 10 appointments. Okay. And so now they're 12, 13 hours in, and then they count their drive time and they had a 20-hour work week, and they thought a lot about the business, but they never did any work. And then they say, well, I'm working like crazy. No, you're not. You worked less than 20 hours this week. And you know what really messes people up is you can work less than 20 hours and go make $5,000 or $6,000. You really actually can. And people start thinking, well, my business isn't growing. No, because you're lazy, because you're working 20 hours a week and you expect to get the result of somebody who like owns a business. Like if you can learn to treat this like a business, that's the key to it. The key to this business is learning to treat it like a business. If you started a McDonald's franchise, so my parents were partners in a Taco Time franchise. You say Taco Time, what's that? Exactly. Yeah, it went out of business. But hey, Taco Time's great, by the way. It just, in our region where we were at, you know, some of y'all have Taco Times where you are, but in our region, it just never took off here. And so what I learned about that was, like, when you start a franchise, there's this franchise disclosure document. I was a kid, I experienced this. And this document is like, it's like that thick, right? It's basically telling you what a bad idea it is to start this franchise. Like, they're asking for money up front. You have to have this much money in the bank. You have to have, you know, this type of property. You have to have these types of insurances. The franchise fees are this much. You have to stick to their rules. They tell you in the whole thing, it's probably not going to work. It's a bad idea. Most people don't make it. Most people fail. If you fail, it's because of you. And then you put all this capital and exposure and like risk on the table for a chance to possibly make a profit by your 3rd to 5th year. That's how franchising works. But in FFL, you get leads, you go out and run 10 appointments, you know, you turn a profit of $3,000, spent less than 20 hours working that week, and you're good. And so, and people think that that's like the dream, right? Like, the dream is to build a big enough agency that the agency works without you and you don't have to sell insurance anymore. In order to do that, you got to put a lot more time in than just 20 hours a week. If I had hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line for this franchise that I just signed this agreement saying it's probably going to fail anyway, like how hard am I showing up? How much am I showing up to work? How hard am I working? Am I just listening to everybody's opinion? Hey, if there was a training 2 hours away from me on how to run that franchise better, would I find any reason in the world not to go if I had $200,000 on the line? No, you would never find a reason not to do it. If the best people in that franchise were setting up a training saying, hey, this is how you do it, and we're going to teach you everything you need to know to be successful at it, and you could go associate with those people, would you ever find a reason not to go? No. You know how many cities I fly into to do trainings where people that live there tell me they're going to be there and don't even show up. I just flew 5 hours to get there. Like, it never ceases to amaze me how that happens. And so if you can just learn to treat this like a business, this can pay you way more than I don't know another business that can do what this can do, to be honest with you. Like, in the beginning, you work way harder than what you actually get paid for. Like, that's the way it works here. Like, you put way more time, sweat, blood, tears into it than the actual paycheck. And then at some point it flips and you actually get paid way more than you should actually be getting paid for the amount of work that you're putting in. And everybody wants that season. They want to be in that season, but you don't want to go through what you have to go through in order to get to that season, which looks a lot of like a lot of work and a lot of toil and a lot of not being recognized and a lot of being looked over and a lot of failure and a lot of mistakes and a lot of beating your head against the wall thinking, why does this happen to me? And self-doubt and all these, you go through all this stuff. But what do you have to do during that time? You have to keep sowing. You have to sow in every single season. If you want to harvest in the spring, you have to sow in the fall. It's the only way it works. And somebody says, well, the season I'm in right now, Trey, is dark. It just doesn't seem like it's working. It's cold. You know, nobody's cheering me on. I got this chargeback. I'm running these appointments. I get all these no-shows. I'm running out of money. I'm losing money on leads. It's because you're going through winter. Everybody has winter. Do you realize that most seeds cannot grow until they're exposed to cold? The moments in this business that make you or break you are not the seasons of plenty. That's not what it is. It's not the momentum seasons. It's the seasons where you couldn't get a person to show up to the business opportunity meeting. You couldn't get a person to show up to the BDM, right? It's those seasons where like you hire 25 people and none of them even call you back to even talk about buying leads. They just disappear. You say that happens to you too? Yes, that happens to everybody. The trick to this thing is understanding that what happens to you happens to everybody else. The people that succeed, they have a good sense of humor and a bad memory. You just need to be able to laugh it off and forget about it and keep doing the activities. Because if you do the activity long enough, it becomes inevitable. Success at this is inevitable. It is a possibility. It is not, it's a probability, is not a possibility. There's no chance to it. It's if you do the right stuff long enough, you go through the right actions long enough and the right circumstances around those actions long enough, it's inevitable for you to have success doing it. The only way to fail at this is to stop. You know how many people, and it's interesting, if you look back, I like looking at the leaderboard and looking back a year ago. Me and Grady were comparing numbers. Really interesting, by the way. So March 2020 to March 2021, FFL Coast to Coast went from 581 issue paid to 2.3 million. Grady went from 916 issue paid to 3.6 million. It was the same amount of growth. It was 4 times. It was 4x, right? What's interesting is if you look in the sub agencies within our teams, there were so many people that were like doing 25,000 a month, 50,000 a month, had 1 or 2 writers, whatever, and now those people are 200, 250. It's just time. It's just doing the right activity for a long period of time. And in both of our organizations, as comparison, as we looked at it, there were also people that were doing better that they were doing more than 50 and they aren't even around. You said, well, how is that possible? How does that happen? They haven't grown at all. Let me tell you how it happens. They talked to 10 people. 1 did something, 1 didn't. They got discouraged and they didn't do it again for 2 months. Meanwhile, the person that was consistently doing the activity, they were running their appointments, they were selling every week, they were hiring new agents, they were helping new agents get started. They were doing more for people than what they had to do. Somebody said, Trey, how do you invest in your business? I help people with leads. That's how I invest in my business. That's what you do. I was talking to an agent. I broke down the numbers. I said, this is what it looks like. They said, that doesn't sound good. I go, why? Because you think you should be making $1 gazillion without putting any of the profit back in to grow it? That's why it doesn't sound good. You have to be willing to do what other people won't do in order to have success. Andrew Taylor taught me very well in this business. And what he taught me was you pay yourself enough to pay your bills, and the rest is just monopoly money. There's a lot of people in this industry outside of Family First Life that'll make $200,000 every year for the rest of their life because their goal is to make $200,000 a year for the rest of their life. And what Sean Mike taught us to do was you work as hard as you can, you help as many people as you can, you live off you make what you need to live off of, and you invest the rest back in your business, into infrastructure that will create more people having success. And if you do that long enough, that $200,000 a year turns into $2 million a year, right? That most people won't get to because they're so busy thinking about themselves rather than thinking about the future and thinking about other people. If you want to get ahead in this business, what you have to do is you have to put other people first. Stop being selfish. People said, I don't know if I should hire people in my area because there's only so many leads. There's always leads for people that want to pay for leads. Always, 100% of the time. I don't care where you're at. You know how many agents we have in places where people thought couldn't get any leads? Shannon Goldsmith's in Los Angeles. Her first month, she wrote $20,000 in Los Angeles. See how she did that? She bought leads from the CRM. She actually worked them. She runs 30 appointments a week. That's how she did it. That's it. She did exactly what we said to do. When you talked to her, you said, Shannon, how'd it feel? She said, it felt like I was failing the entire time. Exactly. Yeah, it feels like you're failing most of the time when it's working. Because there's seed, there's time, and there's harvest. Near that time, feels like nothing's working. Meanwhile, it's what makes all the difference. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. There's a time and a season for everything. I think that's what I titled the episode at the beginning. I appreciate you guys for jumping on. Next week, we will have a special guest. I'm going to move the podcast room upstairs, so we will have a different lighting and banners and different setup and everything, much more room. We'll have a technical director in there to run the cameras and work off to the side so that we can make these the best productions you've ever seen. So I do appreciate you guys. I want everybody to know about June 7th at the LA Dream Center. We are doing a sales conference June 7th at the LA Dream Center in Los Angeles at the Angeles Temple. And it's free. We do encourage everyone to bring a pair or 10 pairs of children's shoes. Our goal is to donate 10,000 pairs of shoes to the most underprivileged neighborhoods in America. And it's near and dear to me because when I was in 4th grade, I got in 9 fistfights in 4th grade. I almost got kicked out of school. I was new to that school. The first day, I got my nose broke at that school. And it was because somebody made fun of my shoes. And so what I encourage you guys to do, what I'm worried about is all those kids in those underserved, underprivileged neighborhoods that haven't been in school in a year, and they're in one of the worst economic situations our country has ever seen. And I want to make sure those kids have some nice shoes to go back to school. And so please, everybody show up with 10 boxes of children's shoes, boys and girls, all ages, K through 12. And let's really bless those neighborhoods. And that's our only cost of admission. Show up with some shoes for kids, do something for other people that they can't do for themselves. And that's a seed, by the way. That's a seed that will help your business grow. I promise you that. So thanks for jumping on, you guys. A time and a season for everything. You guys make it a great one. All right.